Welcome to our weekly Forex Forecast, and this is for the week of December 17th to 21st, 2018, almost at the end of the year here. Just a quick disclaimer before we dive into the analysis here. This is for educational purposes only. Trading is a risky business, so please be careful with your money, especially now that we will be coming into our end of the year here. So holiday season and volatility will pick up because liquidity will decline. So just be mindful of that. All right, so as usual, first we will take a look at our calendar here. I choose to use Forex Factory, but of course you can use any economic calendar that you like. So this is not the correct one. So we need this week. All right, so coming up here, this week we have Monday, CPI numbers here, even though it's not marked in red, and trade balance numbers. These are important numbers. So we do need to pay attention to these. So that will be important here. Australia monetary policy meeting minutes. Anytime there's a central bank, we have to pay attention to that. So that will be important for Australian dollars here. And then we have building permits and housing starts. Again, not marked in red, but this is important piece of data that will impact the market. So we'll pay attention to that. And for New Zealand dollar here, the consumer sentiment number and current account, which is kind of like trade balance again. So those will be important as well, because New Zealand is a big export economy. And if their numbers come out below expectations, that's bad for the currency. Very important here for British pound, we have CPI numbers. It's expected to come in at 2.3, so pretty much staying within the normal range here. So if the number is negative, that will have a negative impact on British pound, because CPI is a very, very important number that the central banks will track. And then we also have CPI number here for Canada. And again, if the number comes in below expectations, it will have a negative impact on Canadian dollar here as well. Now, the most important event for the week will be FOMC here. So this is the Fed statement, and this is the last interest rate hike that the market is expecting for this year. So Fed has done interest rate hikes before, and now they're starting to change their language, because we have seen President Trump basically attacking Fed or being upset at Fed for continuing to raise rates, because now we see that fiscal policy and monetary policy are diverging and they're not supporting each other. So that's why President Trump has not been too happy with Fed about raising rates. And having said that, so what does that mean for us as traders? So first, we are expecting the Fed to raise rates. So this will be the last interest rate hike for this year. And before, they were projecting more interest rate hikes for 2019. I think that number will decrease. So we are looking for forward guidance from the Fed as to what to expect in the future. And Powell last time was talking about how they're almost at the neutral interest rates. So basically, they're changing their stance. Instead of doing aggressive hikes, they're scaling back a bit. And I think if we hear more of that language in the statement here, in the press conference, or in FOMC statement, that will be negative for US dollar. So keep that in mind. So we are looking for an interest rate hike. However, if the commentary they talk about, we'll have to wait and see how the data comes, or they say we are almost at that neutral interest rate hike. So basically what they're saying is we won't have as many interest rate hikes, which will be negative for the US dollar. So look at the commentary. That will be very, very important. And then we have employment numbers, GDP here for New Zealand, of course, will be important. And then Australian data here on employment, it will have an impact on Australian dollar. Bank of Japan here, their monetary policy statement. So interest rate is not likely to change. It's still negative. But again, what they say in their statement will make all the difference. And there is press conference here as well. And Japanese yen is important because as the equities fluctuate, Japanese yen is a safe haven currency. So we start seeing money flowing into Japanese yen and yen actually getting stronger. And Bank of Japan would not want the yen to get stronger because, again, they are a big export economy. And when the yen is stronger, it has a negative impact on their exports. So again, we'll have to focus on what Bank of Japan says about their monetary policy. So if they have an expansionary monetary policy, if they say we're going to continue holding an expansionary monetary policy, that will be negative for Japanese yen, and the yen crosses can go up as a result. And then we all have the third central bank. Again, this one is quite important here because Bank of England did do interest rate hikes this year, but right now we're not expecting any change in the votes in terms of voting for interest rate hike. If there is a change in the votes, that will be, so let's say we see somebody voting to raise rates, that will be positive for British pound. But again, like we saw from ECB, the language was not very strong. So they were concerned about the economy. They were concerned about growth prospects for 2019. So again, if we hear similar commentary here, then that would not be good for British pound. So we have three central banks this week. So expect volatility in the market. And now we are heading into the second half of our December here. This is when more people will start taking holidays, especially towards the end of the week here. And then, so keep that in mind that our liquidity will start drying up over the holidays, which means the moves can be more exaggerated than otherwise. And then we have current account, the trade balance numbers here for British pound again, and the GDP. So this will have an impact on British pound as well. So it looks like a lot of things impacting pound this week. And Canadian dollar here, we see GDP and core sales, US final GDP numbers. So across the board, there's a lot of data coming out this week. So we have to be very careful. And of course, the business outlook survey for Canada here. So expect volatility this week and expect things to maybe change direction. So that's the biggest thing I can say here. All right, so let's move on to our charts. We'll start off with the dollar index here and see what the dollar index is doing, and then we'll go into our charts here. So this looks bullish at the moment. This is on the daily, so let's go to the weekly view. So we are here, we are into our resistance here. So we do have a bullish candle close here for the week. So it is bullish. Now we are into resistance. If we see right up here, we see prices into this resistance area. So if the price closes above here, so we'll have to be very careful here, because if prices like this one here, it can drop. So we have to see a break above for it to continue further. Otherwise, this could turn around here. But right now it is looking bullish, and I would expect further bullishness if it's able to break to the other side and continue on. So bullish for dollar index. So let's go take a look at what we see in our other crosses here. So looking at euro dollar to start, we see that price had been trading in this range for quite some time here. It's still in this range, but we see that price, so we see a bearish candle close here. So this is a bearish engulfing candle close. So I will look for price to drop. So my bias is to the downside here. Now, do keep in mind with all the dollar crosses, so there's a ton of news coming out, like I said, which can change direction of the market. So that needs to be kept in mind. But based on the technicals alone here, this is looking bearish, and I would look for price to drop. So first target would be the bottom of this candle here. The last time price came into this area and then pulled back from here. So target is 1.1214 area. So looking for price to come there and then into 1.1120, so 1120. So 12, let's say 1220 and 1120. So that is what I'm looking for. So bearish bias for euro dollar. Pound here also looking bearish. We have seen price drop here. So it went past our support area here. And now we have a bearish candle close. So the first target here would be 1.2370. So the bias is to the downside, looking for price to drop. And now we have second one will be a 1.2200. So bearish bias for pound dollar as well. And looking for it to drop further. First target 1.2370 level, second one 1.2200, bearish bias there. Aussie dollar here, this one also dropped this week, and here we are. So in terms of our targets here, biases to the downside. Now, not a huge candle close here. Last week we had a big drop, but this week we saw a pullback into this previous support resistance level and then a drop. So this looks bearish still. And first target here would be 0.7100 and then 0.7050 or even into 7020 level. So bearish bias for Aussie dollar. New Zealand dollar, same thing here. Bias is to the downside. Last week, we had a nice weekly candle close and a nice follow through this week here as well. So we have another bearish close here for the week. So looking for price to drop further. Target, first one is 0.6720 level here and then 0.6630. So bearish bias for New Zealand dollar as well. Dollar CAD still in that bullish, on that bullish trend here, even though the move hasn't been very strong. It's still an upwards move and biases to the upside here. This is a weekly, yep. So we have a bullish candle close here and I'm looking for a further move to the upside. So first target here will be into these levels here. So 1.3550 and then second one would be a 1.3800. So that one's quite far away, but right now looking for 1.3350. So bullish bias for dollar CAD. Euro pound here, this one's been all over the place. This week, we see that price went into the previous high here. We had a bullish close last week, so we saw price go all the way up. But now we have seen a rejection from that level. So that's a pin bar there. So looking for it to drop. Target here would be 0.8830 level and then looking for 0.8700. So bias is bearish for euro pound. Euro Swiss franc here, this one is last week we were looking for a move to the downside. We got that, but then price has pushed off of that level. So here we are left with this this pin in the bottom with a small red body here. What that suggests is rejection from this level. So we could get a retest of this here, either into 1.1260 like that, or we could see price come all the way down and then go up like that. So bias right now is for price to test the lower level and then pull back. So that's Euro Swiss franc. Pound Swiss franc, we have a similar thing here as well. We saw that price actually dropped and then it has pulled back. So last week our bias was bearish. So price did go down. And then from there it has pulled back. So this shows that price could go higher. So I would look for price to maybe go into 1.2485 and then do one of these. So looking for it to go higher, but do watch out for it dropping before it does that. Dollar Swiss franc here, this one was bullish. We saw price drop here and then it went higher. So close is bullish here and we are into that almost at that resistance. So for the last 4 weeks, price has just traded in this range. Even though we had a nice bullish candle close here, price was not able to break this resistance. So watch out for that. So bias is bullish right now, but I would really watch out for this 1.00 level because it was not broken last time around. So if it does not break, so we have two scenarios in this case. If it does not break, then it could turn back around just like it did the previous 4 weeks. Or if it does break, then we're looking for price to go up higher like this. So this one we have to watch out and see which scenario develops. But the bias here is bullish. Again, watch out for the resistance. Pound yen here. This one is bearish as well, but we see this this pin in the bottom, which suggests that we could see price turn around. So if you take a look at this candle here, it's similar here. We have bearishness, but then we have a pin in the bottom, and we have the similar candle here, smaller body, but the same thing. And when we see candles like this, there's still bearishness in them, so which means price could go test the bottom and then turn around. But over the last few weeks, as we can see, the moves have been quite small. Overall bias is to the downside, but this is the range that price has been trading in. So now we are towards the bottom of the range, and at this point, it could turn around. So watch out for that, but I would look for a price to retest the low here and then potentially turn around. Euro dollar here, this one has sat lower. This one, we see the price went into our resistance and then came back down. Now we see a bearish pin bar here. So my bias is to the downside, and I would look for price to, so we have support right here. And if you see for the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks here, price has been stuck in this area. It hasn't really gone out of it. So be mindful of that range. Same with pound yen. We are in a range and we are almost at the bottom of the range. Same thing with the euro yen here as well. We are towards the bottom of the range. So we have to watch out for that. So here I'm looking for price to drop. First target would be 127.50. And if it gets through this target, then we are looking at a 126.50 and then potentially all the way into these pins at the bottom here into 124.80. But just be mindful of the range because it could just as easily come into the bottom here and then do one of these. So watch out for that. Bias though is to the downside. Dollar yen here, this one has been interesting. It has also been range bound. So if you take a look at the last few weeks here, as you see, price is just traded in this range. So we do have a bullish candle close for this week here. So I would look for price to go towards the high of the range here into 114.20. But again, because we are range bound, it can go into the top of the range and then turn around. So bias is neutral here, looking for it to go towards the high of the range. And then I think it can turn around from there if it doesn't break to the upside. If it does, then we can look for the next level, which is 115.50. But watch out for the range here. Aussie here. Aussie had a big drop the other day. So we saw price drop and then pull back, and now we have a pin here, but we still have bullishness in this candle. So same thing applies. Again, I would watch out for a pullback before it drops. But I think the pin there shows a rejection, so it could turn around. So we could see something like this and then a drop. So first target is 80.50, and then the second target here, the second target would be 79.00. So bearish bias here for Aussie, but watch out for this pullback before a drop. And of course, for all yen crosses, keep in mind we have Bank of Japan monetary policy statement, which will have an impact on all the yen crosses. So something to watch out for. New Zealand yen, this is a very interesting candle here, nice bearish pin bar. So I would expect price to drop here. But again, watch out for the monetary policy, Bank in Japan monetary policy. So this is a pin bar, looks like this. This is what we have here. So I will look for price to drop. First target would be 76.30. And then we're looking at 75.60 and potentially into 75.00. So bearish bias here for New Zealand yen. CAD yen here, this one has also given us a similar sort of formation here that we saw with the other one. This was for Aussie. So we had a drop. It's pulled back. It has held below the support resistance area at 85.20. So I will look for price to drop here as well. But again, watch out for any pullbacks. And this is kind of the move that I'm looking for. So 83.60 will be the target to the downside. So bias here would be bearish as well. But watch out for the small amount of bullishness in this candle here. All right, so next one here. Let's see, there are a couple of questions. So there's a question about reviews done on weekly time frame. So what time frame do you recommend to look for entries or exits? So in terms of so what I do is I do a weekly to start off with. Every Sunday when we start the week off, I will do a weekly review. And then I go down into a daily review. So I mark my lines on the weekly, and then things will change as news comes out, any developments in the market come out. So I do a daily analysis every day as well. So this is part of the trade room. And then we mark the charts. And usually for entries, I would go down to 1 hour chart and look there. But the levels that I'm watching, so for example, keep this level in mind, but go down to a 1 hour chart and see how price is reacting at that level. So if you see price going into this level and then bouncing off of that on a 1 hour, you see a bearish engulfing candle close or something like that, then I would look at that and potentially look to trade that. So that's sort of how I break it down. So it's a kind of a top-down analysis, weekly, daily, and then going down to a smaller time frame, hourly, or something like that. Okay, and let's go to, question was about Bitcoin as well. We'll take a quick peek at it. Just let's do the gold first here. Gold here, overall, we do have this bullishness in gold, but the weekly candle close here is bearish. It is into support though, so that's something to keep in mind. We have a bearish candle close, but right into this important support. So bias will be to the downside. However, if the price does one of these, be careful with that because we are into support. It could very well do that. But my base case scenario will be price to break down, pull back, and then drop. And again, if our dollar index stays strong, then we are likely to see this. Otherwise, this one could just get stuck at support here and then just go higher from here. So that's possible as well, just because we are at support resistance area. But the bias will be to the downside, and 1210 will be the level I would be watching. But if it does not break below 1234, then this one could go higher as well. Oil has been consolidating here for the last couple of weeks now, or 3 weeks. So from the weekly perspective, the bias is to the downside, but it's in a range here. So for the last 4 weeks, price has stayed in this range. Last 3 weeks, not much of a movement. And the 4th week here, that was a big drop, and then it's just consolidating. When price consolidates, it can do one of two things. One, we saw in Bitcoin, prices consolidated for a long period of time, and then it broke down, because overall bias here is to the downside, just like we saw in Bitcoin. The other one is it can reverse, like here. So price consolidated for a number of weeks here. The bias first was to the upside, and then it reversed. So it can go either way. All we can do is wait for it to show us the direction before we do anything. So having said that, because we are in the middle of the week, middle of the range here, I will look for price to drop here and do one of these. That will be the way I'm looking at the market, because it's range bound. So we have a weekly candle close that's bearish in the middle of the range. So I will look for price to drop towards 49.50 level. And if it holds above, then go back into the range. So this is range bound. Copper here. Copper, on the other hand, this is very similar to what we saw for Aussie. We saw a drop, a pullback, and now there's a pin on top, which means price can drop further. So similar to this one here. So we have a pin on top. We still have bullishness in the body, which means price can pull back before it drops. So that's what I would look for, price to potentially pull back here. Let me just draw it out. So we could get one of these. Watch out for that. My bias would be to the downside here and looking for it to drop back towards the bottom of the range. This has also been range bound for weeks now, and I'm just looking for it to go back down towards the bottom of the range as well. Let's go into our silver here, and then we'll take a look at Bitcoin. And we may have to go to trading view because I don't think I have data that goes too far back for Bitcoin. All right, so this one here, again, trading in the range. A lot of these things have been trading in the range here. So silver here, we have a bearish pin bar. I will look for price to drop further, basically just looking for a move towards the bottom of the range. Now, it can take 2-3 weeks for it to get down there, but the bias is to the downside. So the first target would be 14.17, and then I'm looking for it to drop further towards 14.00. So bias is bearish for silver here. And now let's go into Bitcoin here. Bitcoin is looking bearish. So this is what I was saying here. It consolidated for a long period of time, and we had talked about how it was consolidating, and the longer it consolidates, the bigger the break. And of course, we saw this big drop, consolidated here. This is looking bearish now, and I will look for a further drop, continuation to the downside. Now my chart doesn't quite go back too far, but on a weekly here, we can see it's breaking down. On a daily, we see that it's held below this support level, and we had talked in the trade room about how it was holding below, which means looking for a continuation to the downside, and we have that. So let's take a quick peek at trading view here. BTC, USD. So we need BTC. Here we go. Yeah, so this is looking bearish here as well. So let's go to a monthly here. Yeah, this looks bearish, and it could drop further. So the next support and resistance I'm seeing at 30.50, and then we've got more room to the downside here. Ooh, that looks bad, unfortunately. So 26.20 here. Yeah, so I would say 30.50 will be the first. And if it breaks that, because that here has, it was a swing point here. So we saw price stick here before it continued forward and then did a back test of the same level from the other side. So that's a good swing point. But if it breaks through that, so that's 30. So let's say 30.50 level or 300 level. And then if it drops through that, then we've got ways to go here. So there's this whole range that could get, then we're looking at about 2,000. So looking bearish here for Bitcoin. Let's go back to let's do our indices real quick, because indices these days are becoming very important. So let's take a look at S&P. Last week, we were looking for it to drop. There was a big bearish candle. Now we have a pin bar. So looking for it to drop further. Now do notice, just like last week, we were into support here. So it is into support once again. So I would watch out for that. So it has to break the support before it continues lower. But it is looking bearish. And next target here is 25.50. And then below that, we're looking at 25.20 level there. So bearish bias for S&P 500. Nikkei here, same thing. We saw a drop. And actually, that was a quite nice pin bar here and a nice drop after that. That was on the daily. So let's take a look at the weekly here. We also have a pin here. There is still some bullishness in here. Again, with the Nikkei here, we do have a monetary policy from Bank of Japan, so that we will have to keep an eye on. But based on this here, so we had a drop, a pullback, and a large pin. I'm looking for price to drop here. So 20767 will be the first target, and then 2345 will be the second target here. So bias would be bearish. NASDAQ here, this one also had a nice pin bar on the daily and then a drop. So let's take a look at the weekly here. That's giving us a doji as well. So large pin on the top suggests that price is rejecting that level. So again, we are into support, and see what a big mess here. So be careful with that one. So 6450 will be the first target. 6280 will be the second target. So this is looking bearish as well. DAX here, DAX, we had a drop, a pullback. So this one still has bullishness. So it could go further, it could pull back further, but there is an interesting, so this is a swing point here as well. What we could see price do is pull back into that level. And if it stays below, then I would look for price to drop here and go back towards the bottom of this candle here. So, but watch out for a pullback. Because there is still bullishness in this candle, so it could go higher. FTSE here, this one is showing the same thing, big drop, a pullback. Now, again, there is bullishness in this candle, so it can go higher. So that would be something to watch out for. But the type of move I would look for here would be a retest of the same level. If it stays below 68.99, I will look for price to come back down. And the target will be the low here. But because there is bullishness in the candle, it could go higher as well. So if it breaks that level, then there's room for it to go higher. So keep that in mind. The 68.99 level here is important. If it stays below, I will look for it to drop further. But if it goes back up, then we have this inefficient move here that could get filled. So for now, I would watch out and see how price reacts at that level. So that's all I have. Any questions before we wrap it up here? Welcome, Sadej. What session do I trade? You know what? I used to trade the London session all the time, but I live in a place that makes it highly difficult to do that. So now I trade more of the daily time frame. So I kind of do the longer term. I set up my positions after the daily candle closes, and there I take positions there. Pound New Zealand, I did not cover Pound New Zealand. Let's take a look at that. Okay, so we are back. Pound New Zealand. Pound New Zealand is at an interesting point. So actually, let's take a look at the daily here first. So we see that price pulled back here, and now we are into this area here. So again, with this one as well, I'll take a look at the daily. And looking at this here, so this one has bullishness in it as well. So I think it could go higher into 1.8637 level. And if it stays below, because this is an important swing point here. So if it stays below this level, so kind of like this here, right? Price dropped, pulled back, and it stayed below that swing point and then dropped from here. Same thing, this is what I'm looking for here as well. I will look for price to go into this 1.86, let's say 40 level. If it stays below this level, then I'm looking for it to go lower. But if it breaks through here, we have this whole range that price could trade in. So it's at an important point. I would say bullish for now, but again, keep an eye on 1.8640. So question here is, what will be the attitude of traders with a lot of news coming up? Focus on technical analysis or trade after news? What I like to do, especially when there is, first of all, I don't like to trade news, but again, depends on what kind of news it is, right? Like I don't actually trade the news because the spreads are huge and it could just take you out. So keep that in mind. Stops can get hit fairly quickly because the volatility increases and the spreads go up. As a result, the stops can, they are fair game to be taken out by the brokers. Now, some news, of course, is more important than others. So any of the central bank conferences, whatever, I do not do anything while that's happening. So those are the ones that I like to sit out because they are very important. So Fed, especially FOMC, would be a hard one. So I would sort of trade around the news. But it will be volatile this week. I'm expecting volatility. And then from here on till about the end of first week of January, we are into that low liquidity period, which means prices can move. So I would just be cautious from here on till end of the year and then first week of January. But I would keep an eye on technicals as well as the news, both of them. So SB says, like trading from here until New Year. Yes, absolutely agree with that. We'll just have to be more cautious. And it's, holiday season, best time to do is just take some time off, do some reflection and set some goals for the new year. But I would not go heavy into trading activity unless, there was some good setup or something. I would just sort of take a step back more than going aggressive at this point. All right, so that's all I have. So just a quick thing, I will be doing a new Turning Pro Challenge next week. So while you're setting your goals, keep that in mind if you are wanting to join. We will launch that again next year, mid-January, sort of what I'm thinking. But I will update you as that progresses. And if there's anything you would like to see from me in terms of types of videos that I create or things you want to learn, please feel free to send them my way. You can email me at raman@tradingwithvenus.com. I am happy to get some feedback so that I can create some content that is actually meaningful and helps everyone. So just feel free to email me. So it will be raman@tradingwithvenus.com. All right. So you guys have a wonderful week, and I will see you again next week. Bye for now.